Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage. I've been able to play a little bit of the Halo Remake, just some of the new missions, just to kind of get a feel for the studio. So, and this is just an initial look. Full review will come out later when I've actually completed it. I am going through it with someone that is also a Halo fan. And so, yeah, we'll take our time probably over the next month or couple of months to actually play through the whole thing. So that review is coming. But we'll start with the story, go over some game mechanic changes, performance, glitches, and just what I think so far about what Halo Studios is able to create. So the story, ultimately with the new campaign missions, is you're just following Johnson and you're hearing from Williams the whole time when you actually meet her in the second campaign. And you work on rescuing prisoners and also recovering data. That's what I'm gathering so far. I'm not entirely sure if that's it, but that's what I've seen. We do have 3 new missions, and each has several checkpoints within it. So these missions aren't like super short necessarily. They're about as long as what we would expect from some of the other campaign missions that we have in the original. And that's actually kind of nice. There's actually some real material there to go through, and that's actually kind of cool. And these missions also take place roughly about a year before the events of Halo itself from the original Halo 1. The overall game mechanic changes that we have, well, there's no multiplayer, it is just the campaign. And I personally think this was kind of a miss because I actually enjoy some of the feel that we have with the weapons and the movement and some of that stuff. A lot of it does feel similar, but there are some nice changes and it does have a fairly good feel to the whole thing. So multiplayer I think would have been great, but again, we all know that Halo Infinite, which did not do well, was actually supposed to, be the whole thing for multiplayer to begin with. But that hasn't really necessarily been the case. We do have a sprint button, which is nice. You can just hold it down and actually sprint, which is wonderful. But you do not have to use this if you don't want to. But it is nice to actually get around faster because some of the missions, including the new ones, there is a bit of trekking to do. But what I do like about the newer missions is there actually is a lot of combat involved. Unfortunately, you can't duel. This would have been a nice upgrade to actually have. You can't have 2 weapons at a time. You also can't pick up 2 of the same weapon. So let's say you want, 2 needle rifles or 2 spikers maybe. But no, you can't actually do that. And so that's kind of frustrating that you can't have 2 weapons of the same because sometimes too you just want to pick up what you can actually use. You could do that in the original, but you can't do that in this one. The HUD too is also altered, but still pretty much straightforward. It's easy to read, it's easy to tell what you have, and there are also some settings where you can change and alter some of the HUD or even make it disappear entirely if you wish. You can toggle crouch instead of holding it, which I also appreciate that, though you can also change that as well. There's also gun racks in the game. So while you're traveling through at least the new missions so far, Korea and I have also been able to see multiple gun racks kind of laying there, either with human weapons or actually with Covenant or Brute weapons. And there's not like there's a ton. There's just 2 per rack, but it's nice to actually see them. There's also some weapons that are added that we didn't get to see in the original Halo 1, and it's nice to actually see them there. And so we're seeing kind of an expansion of the arsenal, which is nice. And all of them actually so far feel pretty good. They all feel pretty punchy, but they don't necessarily sound overly punchy. But like the feel, the haptic that you get from the weapon is fairly good. I would say too that the battle, or like not the battle, but the assault rifle that you have is way more accurate than it was in the original. And this I actually appreciate because it actually somewhat operates more like an assault rifle than just something that just really just spreads absolutely all over the place. You can also now aim with your assault rifle, which is nice too, which is nice, nice having a modern touch to that. So it makes me actually want to use it because now I can use it effectively. You also have a field of view slider, which is nice. This is also for first and for third person when you're in vehicles. There are now 42 skulls. 42. Each one you have to find, and Lasso just got that much harder if you can actually complete it. What is nice is that if you all actually work together on the campaign and you're all online somewhere, you can actually have up to 4 of you on the campaign, which I think is kind of necessary on Legendary with all skulls on. There's also 13 hidden terminals. This actually helps you unlock some of the Halo lore in the game, which is nice. It gives you something to look for. We still have the 4 regular main difficulty levels for the game. That hasn't changed. As for performance, There is actually a quality mode, but I can't imagine using it because there's already some issues. There is stutter when loading new sections or getting to new checkpoints. We would kind of assume checkpoints, but we still have some of that stutter there. It just isn't necessarily as bad. Cutscenes too also don't look like they're at 60 frames per second, even though that's what my screen is telling me. But yeah, I think they're definitely rendered at 30 frames per second, but the game itself is running at 60. There's still a roughness to the game that doesn't quite feel finished. Even though this is roughly about a week after launch of early access, we still have some of these issues. Oh, I will say for performance, when I have these kind of stutters, I'm getting down to basically 40 and then back up to like 30 or 57, 59 frames per second. We also encountered this with the Oblivion remaster that we had that was also an Unreal Engine 5. And I wonder if this is kind of an Unreal Engine 5 issue or that some of the studios just don't have quite the experience to handle this problem. Because this does seem to be an issue. So yeah, when you have some of that loading in, that is kind of a problem. The glitches itself, well, in the new missions, boy, Johnson gets stuck often in the first mission. It's horrible, even to the point where you're having to bash him into the head like you're seeing now, or trying to push him forward and try to get him actually to move, because yeah, he gets stuck from room to room, and you often have to babysit the guy. And it's really important. He can't just jump along with you because he's the one that's actually opening all of the doors for whatever reason. And this really feels kind of inconsistent because in the second mission or later in the first, I don't know exactly where the break is, I'd have to look, but you can start opening some of the doors yourself, which again doesn't make any sense. So why they've actually designed it this way, I think it's just the wrong way to design it. Because if Johnson wasn't buggy, it wouldn't be a problem. But since Johnson is, and we rely on him to even progress forward, we have these progression bugs in the first mission. Also, NPC animations, once you bust out some of the prisoners and stuff, well, they have some animation problems, and they also run around without weapons for a while, which is kind of hilarious. And they kind of bug out a little bit. And also, the NPCs don't ever actually seem to die like they did in the original. So, while it's not important necessarily to the story, I do think it's important to the experience because you can shoot and throw grenades all over the place at random, and you don't have to worry about wiping anybody out, which is kind of weird. Instead, and there's no real consequence either. And so this is kind of a weird feeling because there's really no way to take them down. Now, what I have seen in on one of the ships further along in the missions is that people are able to take out the men that are sitting at the consoles on the ship, but not the women.
Is this the new Halo? He could just kill NPCs?
That's it. I'm shutting you down.
Wait, you can't kill the women? Wait, you can't kill the women? I'm so confused. Okay, 2 women. That's a dude. That's a dude. That's a dude. Oh, wait, what? What happened to equality?
And I find that highly irregular too. We're kind of like, again, pushing this type of narrative with DEI that I personally don't think should be there. And this gets me to my next problem. We also have Williams, who seems extremely out of place. Now, we're supposed to care about Williams and supposed to understand that she is a badass. But the issue is that we don't actually get to see any of that. We don't know any history. We just have Johnson telling us that she's a badass.
Lieutenant Williams, Tiger Company.
From the 92nd Shock Troops Battalion.
One and the same. Honored you've heard of us, Sergeant Major. We certainly know who you are.
The honor's mine, LT. Glad we could help.
Robbins, take the team and give me a perimeter check.
You don't seem as impressed as the rest of your crew.
No, Sergeant Major, I'm not. Takes more than fancy armor and a good PR campaign to impress me. That said, you do have our thanks.
And she also doesn't like us simply because we're Master Chief and a massive piece of armor, and also bigger than her. And she sees this as just kind of a campaign thing, which I think is fine. But the way that it comes across is it's kind of like an equaling or like even a supplanting to Master Chief. And I think this is weird. I think it could be fine if it was actually portrayed this way, but instead we just get to watch the screen with it all being told to us, and then we kind of constantly have this bitchy feeling while we're playing through the rest of the new missions. I hope she dies. The other thing is that she already talks way too much. Now, Johnson, he has some interesting words or some little quips or whatever, but then, when she gets together with Johnson, her and Johnson actually have whole conversations as you're working on getting through the mission or even waiting to start and move to the next section. And that kind of gets annoying. We shouldn't necessarily have that. This is supposed to be an arcade shooter action game, and that's not what we have here. So Williams already just seems frustrating as a character. She's got a bad attitude. She doesn't like us so far. It is possible there could be some redemptive qualities there, or that there could be something in the third mission, but I kind of have a feeling we're not going to have that. Also, too, it just feels like she's just checking the box for a DEI to where she is equally as good as Master Chief, which we know is not the case. Master Chief is, taken as a teenager, basically, as a boy, to work through the program and to ultimately become what he is, which is a hero weapon against possible alien invasions and all of that. And that's what we aspire to as guys when we're playing this. But when we're having her trying to smear that, it just feels like we're spitting on 25 years of history with Halo. And it doesn't feel good as a player. It doesn't make me like her. It doesn't make me want to be her or try to coincide. It's just something I have to watch and sit through and engage with, whether I actually want to or not. Now, I can at least skip the cutscenes, which is nice, but not all of them are cutscenes. I just get to hear and watch some of that dialogue. We also have an issue with textures loading in. Again, it's not like a ton, but there is a little bit there, especially when we get to some of the later missions. You can see off on a veranda that like some of the textures are popping in and out, and you can literally find a spot on the ground to just move back and forth on and watch those textures actually pop in and pop out all the time. I'm assuming this is actually to maintain the performance mode. On quality, I don't even know if that's necessarily a problem, but that texture pop in can get a little frustrating. The game, too, has already been out for a week with early access, and still some of these bugs, like the progression issues, are not fixed. And that's kind of shocking to me because, again, we're supposed to be having a top-notch AAA studio that is revamping themselves, and this is not a great start. It's a fine start. It's okay. It's pretty good. It's somewhere in there. And I'm not necessarily going to give it a rating because, again, I have not finished the entire thing, and I want to see everything that we can. I will say using Unreal Engine 5, things look visually really good. When those plasma grenades go off or when they're starting to pop, we actually get some little visual animation there, which is really neat. Also, the flare and the explosions and just the luster of different materials and stuff. Man, does it look sharp. It actually looks really good. And when everything actually runs pretty well, we haven't encountered really issues with any of the enemies having issues, just the NPCs or other people like Johnson needing us to progress through the first level. The glitches are not horrible, but they can be game breaking, which I think is unacceptable, especially since this is a launch of a game. And if we're going to prove that Halo Studios has it, we have to prove right out of the gate with already an established, originally exclusive IP that they can build something that's awesome. And that feeling doesn't seem to be here. And again, I will revisit this with my review. Taking a look at Steam just for the reviews, we're looking at a 64.7 with 8,000 reviews, which isn't as high as we would think it would be, but we'll get to see that later, that a lot of it is actually on PlayStation and also Game Pass, and that a lot of people, too, did not buy the deluxe edition. They actually waited for the actual release to buy the $50 edition, which I think was probably a smart move, now knowing what we know. Taking a look at the PlayStation Store, this is a 4.0 out of 5 with 3.9 thousand ratings. And again, we're just looking at the base game. Also looking at the same thing with Xbox. It's a 4.0 out of 5. And I think that's a little high. I still think it's fun. I think it's great that we've added some stuff. But again, I'm not going to pass judgment yet until I have my full review. But that's currently where things are. Taking a look at Metacritic, we have an 81 for critics and a 5.2 for players on PlayStation. And then we can see here for Xbox is roughly an 84 for critics and a 77 for critics on PC. So again, it's not as high as we would think of. And yeah, I think 80 is too high right now with where my feeling is at. I'm probably at roughly somewhere between like a 6 and a 7. That's probably where I'm sitting. When we take a look at OpenCritic, we're looking at an 83 for a top average, and 90% of critics would actually recommend, but we don't have a player rating yet. And now we'll take a look at actual player counts. And it is interesting because a lot of people are saying that it's died according to just the early access. Now, we did have early access. I believe that was roughly 5 days. And now we've had the actual launch. Now, this is SteamDB, but again, it doesn't tell the whole story. That's why we're going to look at the other player counts. But we had roughly 20,000 for early access, and then we had another pretty big spike for 25,000 actually at launch, and it's been tailing off. And again, it doesn't take too long to complete the campaign. They did add some stuff. I will have my review later. Take a look at PlayStation Time Tracker for the last 7 days. Again, this is only just roughly the first 2 days since launch, and it's actually number 30, right below Marvel Tokon, which is pretty good. This, for early access, this was in the 50s, and now it's in the 30s, and this is only the second day. Take a look at Xbox. This is just Series X and S consoles. We're looking at number 6. This was number 8 yesterday, and also during early access, this was in the 80s. So for this now to be moved up that quick, a lot of people just waited until it's actually on Game Pass or to actually just buy it. They weren't that interested in the deluxe edition. We'll take a look at PC. It's the same story. It's actually number 2 for those that have bought it through the Xbox store. On PC, it's number 2. And this, again, was quite a ways back. I don't exactly remember, but I don't even think it was in the top 50. Take a look at Game Pass Ultimate, which is console only. It's actually number 4. On console, it's number 6. So most people waited for Game Pass. It's the same story with Game Pass for PC. It's number 1 instead of number 4. So again, they just waited for it to show up on Game Pass. So the majority of the players, I would say, across PC and Xbox are playing on Game Pass, and that's why we don't see it here on the Steam charts. Now, I would still expect this to be bigger, and yes, we still don't necessarily have actual player counts, but even on PlayStation, which is not supposed to be doing very well, it's still number 30. Now, this is not a perfect sample size because, again, it's only people that have actually volunteered to be a part of the sample, right? But this is still roughly 15,000 players, and this is only day 2 out of 7. We still got 5 more to go, and we've already hit number 30 out of 100. So taking a look at everything, there's not as many people actually buying it on the Steam storefront, but a lot of it is actually going through Game Pass that we can see, at least in hours played. And usually the more hours played or in the top positions that we have, usually there's way more players actually there because you need the players to get the hours, etc. Again, it's not a perfect measure, but looking between PlayStation and also between Xbox and Game Pass and PC for Xbox, that's where the majority of the players are, I think, is on console. Everyone else on Steam is just kind of waiting. We'll see how it goes because we also haven't really trusted 343 Studios to begin with some of the stuff that they've already released in the past. And so, yeah, this is kind of, again, a loss of trust with the studio, and I really think they actually need to bring that back. So, again, with this, I think it's a good start, but it needs to improve it from here. The quality needs to be there at launch, especially with early access. And I want to mention this too, even with early access, there were people that have refunded the game, at least through Xbox and Steam, because they couldn't even play the thing. That's not good. You want to make sure that everything's lined up, that if you're paying for early access, that you're actually getting that time back. And whether, regardless of what platform or console it is, I think there needs to be a type of guaranteed return or refund policy that we can actually have when games mess up. And then too, when there's downtime on services, there needs to be kind of a oops, sorry type of credit accredited to us. So that way, when we actually have that, we can kind of feel like they care a little bit. Other games, especially MMOs, already have this, and it would be nice since services are being pushed so hard on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo that we would actually be able to have this type of service as well. It's a type of mutual respect I think we would expect. So overall, that's kind of the initial look that I have. It's not great. It's not horrible. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. And there's a few things that I expect, but my expectations were not met so far. And we'll see with things with the review. So if you enjoyed the video, like, sub, all that jazz. Also share the video if you would like. It helps out the channel. So with that, folks, we'll see you guys on the next one.